So you don't know the chords, and you don't know the songs, but you want to be able to jam. If that sounds like a topic you would enjoy, stick around for this class.
So does that mean we don't have music stands for this?
Probably not, yeah.
Destroying a million pieces of
Welcome, lovely people.
It's okay, I'm recording. I'll listen to it in the classrooms this evening. Actually, it's not that. No, you didn't.
Play all those seconds. Make it crunch.
Anybody want an A? Great, so I made a topic for this class. Welcome, I'm so glad you're here. And I think the topic that I wrote down was something like,
What's it play when you don't know what to play?
well, it's kind of like, yeah, it's like we spend a lot of time here, you know, and certainly in my classes, I spend a lot of time talking about like how to learn the chords and how to learn the grooves and how to practice stuff that we don't know. Because then once we practice and we understand that stuff that we don't know, then we can be creative with that stuff. So let me just back up again on that point because I think it's a really, really common problem that I had and that most classically trained musicians that I've met have, which is that we kind of make these assumptions that like I just should be able to know the tune or I should be able to hear the tune or I should be able to feel the groove, and it's like none of that stuff works that way in my experience. The way it works is no, I shouldn't be able to do anything. That, you know, I study something or I have like, you know, maximum exposure to it and then I understand it. And that's how it works. That's how it works like with most things in life. I think there are some notable exceptions, which is like if you're 3 years old and you're exposed to something like by ear, maybe it's easier. You know what I mean? You know, and by the time you're 18, like there's a big difference when you're 18 versus when you're 3, like the way that we just like naturally absorb things, right? And so what I see and what I used to do to myself was just like people just punishing themselves, just torture, continuing to try to play stuff that we don't understand. Trying to play harmonies that we don't know, trying to play grooves that we can't feel yet or we don't quite have a handle on. And so the way that I teach all that stuff is like, hey, use whatever tools you can to learn that thing. Don't condescend to it. Like if you're just like, I should be able to hear blues and play blues because it's just a minor blues scale and it's just some thirds and sevenths and oh yeah, that's easy. That's a condescending attitude actually. And to me, it's like very deep, like playing 2-5-1s or like playing jazz or like anything. Any groove, any harmonic progression, it's like it requires like a lot of respect and slowing it way down and taking tiny parts, tiny practice spots and being like, wait a second, what is a dominant seventh chord, right? And like, wait a second, what is this bossa nova groove? Slow it way down. Write things out if that helps you. Because writing things out, in my opinion, it shortens the distance for me to memorize things. So anyway, this class is not that. This class is, well then, what can we be creative with that we already understand, right? If we take changes out of the mix, if we take all these other things out of the mix. So a lot of times in my guided practice classes in the mornings, I'll do that using like a major scale. And using like a quote-unquote friendly, like straight 8 beat that feels like familiar to what most of us grew up playing, right? And, but I want to give you just more opportunity to think about that and to practice it. So we're going to use free notes. And I'm just going to throw out lots of different random structures that we can practice being creative with. I want to start with a waltz. So the waltz structure that I'm going to give us is going to be like this. It's going to be like a bass note that's like this. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1. And it's any note that happens on 1. And then the other part of the structure is going to be 2, 3. 2, 3. So let's say randomly that this side of the room plays the bass part and that side of the room plays the 2, 3. Can we do that? It's any note, but we still want to try to be musical within that. 1, 2, 3. Offer it again. I wasn't clear probably. So this half of the room, we're going to do the bass line, which is just playing 1, any note on 1. And then this half of the room, let's do the 2, 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Switch to the other side of the room, and I'm making an observation. I guess there could be different ways to approach this in this group. Like one way would be to try to match articulation, to try to come to agreement on like what is the length of this quarter note, what is the length and what is the articulation, is it slurred, right? So we could try to find that amongst each other. So you have the bass, 1, 2, 3. To demonstrate it as a duo? Okay, 1, 2. Let's switch it. Switch your roles, and let's get an improviser that wants to play over top of it. Who wants to play and take a solo over top? Chris takes a solo over top. 1, 2, 3. Clarify that I think that for the soloist, you can have a little more freedom if you want.
Oh.
So you don't have to mimic the rhythm of the
I don't have to
inner
stay
voices.
there.
Yeah, so if,
Okay.
the way I would think about this
Yeah.
groove, and the way I pretty much think about every groove as a simplistic way of thinking about it, is that a groove is made up of 2 things, a bass line and an inner voices, period. That's it. So there's 3 parts of a song. There's like the melody, the inner voices, and the bass line. So if at any time, if the bass and the inner voices, like a groove has overlap, but it also has distinction. So if like the bass line and the inner voice do the same thing, it won't necessarily feel like a groove. It'll just feel like a unison line or a unison rhythm, which is different, right? And the same thing goes with the melody. So if you overlap and come in and out. So here's some ideas for you. You could play long notes. You could play a combination of dotted half notes, quarter notes, and eighth notes.
I got it.
1, 2, 3. friendly observations, right? And this is why this is so valuable, because now we get to work on music. Because you're not thinking about thirds and sevenths, you're not thinking about your bow thing, you're not thinking about, oh, I never studied jazz, right? This is a waltz, pretty much everybody can understand it. So how can we work on the music? We can be together, and we can be, we can have an ensemble that's balanced. So let's try to create that. 1, 2, 3. About the last measure where you might have lost where's one, and that's okay, that's okay. So one of the challenges and one of the beautiful challenges of when we're improvising, which you're all improvising right now, right, is to balance the okay, how can I do no harm to the music? And it's kind of an irony because there's a discipline of restraint, and Victor Wooten speaks about this eloquently. I highly recommend his book, The Music Lesson. The second chapter is never lose the groove in order to find a note. And he talks about the importance that like when he's on stage, he never goes beyond playing at 60% of his ability. Because he's prioritizing the value. He has decided this is a value for me, I'm gonna play in time. So that means if I play something simpler, if I play something less complex, it's gonna be in time. And that's the value. So he's leading as a musician, he's choosing, this is my value, which is very much like the choice we have to make as human beings, like what value do I stand for every day in life? You know what I mean? And so it's not about being fancier and faster and more complex, it's about how can I embody this value in everything I do. So let's take it over here, let's take this quartet over here. Jeannie, Chris, Ben, and Maya. We've got a quartet. So we have 2 soloists. No, we'll have one bass, 2 inner voices together, and 1 soloist to start. Ready? Same group. 1, 2, 3. Cool. I'm sorry, I'm going to be a little bit nitpicky. So let's play together. And now remember that you always have the option to not play. Right? You have the option to not play. Yeah, and you have the option to move your chair.
So far away.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Sorry.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Sorry. So you've got the inner voices. Sorry, I didn't explain it enough probably.
She's based in these 2 are inner voices?
Yes.
So we're on 2, 3 no matter
You guys are both on 2, 3 in theory. 1, 2, 3. So here's, Ben, let me explain again. So what I want you to play is 2, 3 with her. And I'm also going to make an additional recommendation that you play in the upper register of your cello because the inner voices is sort of defined as being like in the middle of the register. Not always, but it's like a good starting place. Does that make sense? Yeah. So 1, 2, 3. Together. Okay, I'm going to conduct. It's just so we can stay together. Now we're playing in 12 notes. So the reason I'm saying this is because I sense, and this happens a lot of times with free structured jams, is that people feel that there's this additional pressure on them that they have to make something that they think is somehow pretty. Look at the trees. Okay, true diversity is not always like trying to be this or trying to be that. Like embrace 12 tones.
Okay.
God did not make things in a major key. Right? So just just like indulge the possibility that the music is in playing together and that it's not in the notes. Okay? 1, 2, 3. music to me. It really does. Because you're together and you're balanced and you're listening. That's just my take on it. So, okay, so that's a waltz. Can everybody remember that structure and how we create it? Because what I really want you to take away from this is like, oh, I can go do this now. And that it doesn't have to be a waltz. Like a waltz is just one. I want you to have the framework so that you can make structures. So we did this earlier. Let's do just free notes, but we're going to do it with like rubato. So it's going to be like free note, off, free note, off. I'll give the free note. But we want to attack together and balance our level and release together. Cool, cool. So let's see if we can do all of us in a free note, but you can change your note at any time. So first of all, let's just get a free note where we're balanced. Infinite note. Let your bow change, but we try to make a seamless change, right? So it's actually good practice to change your bow and try to make a seamless note, right? That's a good balance, although you're too quiet. Yeah, let's talk about balance. So everybody, a lot of times people talk about don't be too loud and don't overpower. But I would like to say that I think in a community, it appeals to me this idea that you're not allowed to hide. You're not allowed to be invisible in a community. I'm not sure if it works perfectly or not, but I'm liking trying it out. So that's what I called out Miriam for. I was like, no, you don't get to be quiet. You have to be louder, right? It kind of works both ways. So it's kind of interesting. So just infinite note balance. That's nice. Now, at any point, you can change your note, and when you change your note, you can kind of emphasize it and then pull back again. That also feels like music to me, 100%. I'd rather hear that than hear somebody playing Fly Me Over the Moon and like whatever, like, and not playing together or not playing change. You know what I mean? Or even if I'd rather hear this just as much as hearing a Killing version of Fly Me Over the Moon. I'll put it that way. It's like 100%. Okay, so let's do another form where basically the sentence game. I think some of you guys are familiar with the sentence game. So just note, 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 until somebody says period. So can you guys demonstrate that?
Period? Like,
Nice.
I actually say period.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's a musical period.
Sorry. So let me back up and I'll show you the full sequence. I always assume people have heard me say the same things over and over, so I sometimes skip things. So let's do the original sentence game, which is you say a word, you say a word, you say a word, you say a word, you say an actual word until one of you says period. This is actually a theater game. I learned it from my wife.
Improv.
Yeah. So word, 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 word until someone says period. The goal is to make a sentence. Can you start?
House. Oh, are we playing?
No, there's no instruments. It's just words.
Tree.
So we're going to try to make a sentence when we start, okay? We're trying to make a sentence.
We're
Yeah.
making a sentence. Waking.
Aboard
Top.
of the
Level.
of the,
Tree.
on board level.
That was more than one.
Right, yeah. So let's try it. I'll do it with Jeannie. Today
We.
will,
Go.
period.
Today we will go.
Kids are really good with this game. They get it right away, by the way. For any of the teachers in the room, because I know there's some people that are teachers. So then usually the next thing that I do is I'll say, okay, and now do it with your instruments, which I skipped the first one today. Sorry about that. But it's a great, now, then the next thing I do after the instruments is I say, okay, 2 more volunteers, please. Ben, assuming are you with us? Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And Maya. So you're gonna do it, but I want you to suggest a change in the rules.
Right now, out loud,
Yes. Tell us the change in the rules.
that we can play 2 notes instead of 1.
Great. 2 notes instead of 1. Okay, so let's see
As an
that.
option.
As an option, okay. I like it. Either 1 or 2 notes.
Start.
Sure. Beautiful. So one of these kind of poles of structure, one of them is that we play simultaneously versus we play call and response. So it's just like kind of a pole. Another pole would be like that you're using tonality, like you're playing in a major key, or you're using chromaticism. Another like, I don't know what the word is, not poles, but like a dichotomy or a binary, let's say, would be that you're playing with pulse versus without pulse, right? So let's do something with pulse now. Let's all stay together, and we're just going to play constant dun 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 dun. A Mozartian rondo, if you will. Jump bum bum bum, ready go and. Let's balance and play together. So I submit to you that this is worthy of respect. And because, like, when I do engage in any of these exercises, I consider it the most profound challenge and practice for myself personally. To be listening to everybody else in the room, to be thinking about all the things that I normally would think. Like, it's hard to do that stroke with the bow, right? It's hard to maintain tempo. It's hard to think about where am I moving, what are they doing, how do I blend with somebody else's articulation, right? Let's try it again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Who wants to be a soloist? Raise your hand if you want to be a soloist. Okay, Alva's going to be the soloist. Who wants to be the 3 accompanists? 1, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the 4 accompanists are going to do what we just did, and Alva's the soloist. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Dealing with love observation. Chris and Miriam are not together. So, and I was just thinking in my mind, because Chris had a long career as a dancer, right? I'm just imagining right now what it would be like if there was an ensemble of dancers and that they were doing some kind of freestyle thing, right? That you have to have an awareness about where's this dancer at, and are they in the front, and am I backing them up, and but are we in the same beat, and like
In the light.
yeah. So, but the thing is, like, so you get to be aware, are you together with her? You get to be aware, are you together with her and her and her? That's the music. That's actually everything else. So if you're thinking, well, where does my second finger go now? But you're letting that other thing go. Like, that's the thing. Like, stay here. Like, stay wherever is easy. Let's do the same thing, but we're going to put a variation in the structure. Now you're allowed to have rests. You're allowed to have rests in the accompaniment. I'll bring you in. Same, everything else is the same. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So this is just another example. And again, you can do this in duo, you can do it trio, you can even do it solo. You can do all these exercises solo and record yourself. I have like 55 solo improvisations on my website or on my YouTube channel or whatever, which are just examples where I just practice with structures like this. And it's the whole point is that you can develop so much as a creative musician when you're just putting yourself in structures, but it's not requiring you to be on half. Okay, more examples. Let's take an ostinato. This is one that most people think of more, right? An ostinato. So, does anybody want to suggest an ostinato?
I don't know what it is.
An ostinato is just a recurring bass figure, usually. Good. Where's 1? Is it on the first G? 1. Can everybody play that? 2, 3, and 4. Nice. So let's have this half play that figure, and you guys improvise over that. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Nice. Now let's switch. Now we'll switch. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Oh, sorry. The G starts on 1. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Same ostinato. Over here, we're just going to have dun 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 chromatic. You can change the notes whenever you want. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now let's say that we can all move in and out of the ostinato and to doing anything else that we want, maybe, but staying within the like dun 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 that grid, right? Everything you play has to be a division of an eighth note. It's either dun 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 dun. Nothing faster than an eighth note.
No
One.
pauses? No pauses?
You can do pauses. We'll say pauses are
Nothing
fine.
longer than that.
Nothing shorter than an eighth note, so no 16ths. I don't know, it's just arbitrary. I'm just coming up with structures. 2 and 3 and 4 and. let's do phrase size. So phrasing, doing like 5-note phrases. And let's do 5-note phrase, 4-note phrase, 3-note phrase, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Notes, but it's not quarter notes, there's a specific kind of note.
There's no, yeah, that's the only structure is the amount of notes in a phrase.
Okay.
So there's no pulse, there's no anything else, that's it.
I'm going around like that.
Yeah, yeah, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
That's fine.
Sorry.
The noise count. I couldn't help it. Cool. So you could do that by yourself, or you could do that with another person. You can do it at the same time. What would it be like if you played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you did 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 at the same time? Rubato. Let's hear it.
You get one?
There is no one. It's just. Okay, so you're doing 5.
Yeah.
5. Okay, so you're doing 5, and then 4, and then 3, and then 2, and then 1. You're doing 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. I'll cue you guys in. No, so you're doing 1-note phrase. You're playing a 1-note phrase, and then you play a 2-note phrase, and you play a 3-note phrase, a 4-note phrase, and a 5. I'm going to demonstrate. Here we go. So I'm going to do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I'm sorry,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, play a 1-note phrase for me. Perfect. Now play a 2-note phrase. Now play a 3-note phrase. Now play a 4-note phrase. Now play a 5-note phrase. That's it. Perfect. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, and together. So but you're starting with 1-note phrase, then 2, then 3, then 4,
Yeah,
then
so
5.
one
And you're always going to take a pause in between your phrase,
That's a hard.
right? And it's not, there's no time keeping us together, there's no tonality. We're just see what happens. Great. Cool. Structure. So, well, let me explain kind of my theory about how I come up with the frameworks. So I have 4 buckets. The first bucket is feelings, the second bucket is techniques, the third bucket is musical elements, and the fourth bucket is anything else. So, and then I consider that those 4 buckets, that pretty much contains everything in the infinite universe. And so these are all buckets of like parameters. And these parameters are what I use to create structure. So you can have like one, so let's say from the musical elements bucket, right? We've got rhythm, we've got phrasing, we've got pitch, we've got harmony, we've got musical form, we've got groove. And so we can pick any one of those, which is what I've been doing today. I was like, well, let's play 5-note phrases, or let's use 8th notes, right? Or whatever, these kinds of things. In the technique bucket, we've got any right-hand technique and any left-hand technique. And then in the feelings bucket, it's easy to just think of feelings like sad, happy, confused, or whatever. And so I just mix those together or just pick any one of them. And that's how I come up with my structures. And then the other bucket is just anything else. So it could be anything. So in fact, can I get somebody to volunteer?
Sure.
Okay, you're gonna volunteer. Okay, so what I want you to demonstrate for us is a triangle, and then a square, and then a circle, but not in that order. You're gonna play 3 phrases. One is a triangle, one is a square, one is a circle. And then we're gonna try to guess which one was the triangle, which one was the circle, which one was the square. So you're gonna have a pause in between. So you're gonna play a phrase, then you have a pause, then you have another phrase, then a pause, and then another phrase.
Okay.
That's number one. That's number two. Great. I think the last one was the triangle. Was that right?
Square.
That was the square? Okay, cool. Anybody have any other guesses?
The first, the circle.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Now I could add to that and be like, do a triangle, but do a pizzicato, or do a double stops pizzicato, and make it go upwards. Right? You see how I use the different? So like I went to the technique bucket and I was like pizzicato, I'll add that, or double stops, just add a technical element. And I went to the musical element, which was like upwards. It's like melodic direction, right? That's how I come up with structures.
The first bucket is musical.
Well, it's not any real order, but I use feelings, techniques, musical elements, and everything else. So that's how I come up with my structures. And then I just practice in those structures. But the thing is, if I'm playing like on a jazz tune, I'm also using the same structures. If I'm playing on a fiddle tune, I'm also using the same structures. So when people are like, how do you come up with the structure of a solo? Should it always be this? Should it always be that? I'm like, no, I have all these parameters. It's like a tape loop in my head. It's like, and what I notice also is I check my playing for trends. And if I do the same things, that I think, oh, I'm going to change that. So it's like if I'm only playing eighth notes, I'm like, oh, I was only playing eighth notes. So I'm going to like not play eighth notes, or I'm going to play other varieties, or everything I play sounds sad. Then it's like, okay, well, I noticed that trend, so I can choose to change that, and I can make something sound confused or something sound happy. So if you practice this way, if you're in a constant practice of putting yourself in restraints, and the more uncomfortable they make you, the better musician they'll make you. Because like like I said earlier, it's like everybody, they just start to go to a major key or something. It's like we'll practice chromatic. If everybody's always playing with a pulse, it's like we'll practice without a pulse. Or if you're always playing with a 4/4 meter, we'll practice in 3 or practice in 6. This is how you will stop ever repeating yourself. This is how you will also not have writer's block, right? And it's ultimately what will make you a more empathic musician, because you're constantly having to submit to the constraints of the environment or the structure that you're within. But what's critical about this is it does not require more knowledge than you currently have. It does not require technique. You can have a 3-year-old do most of these things if you structure it for them, and you can structure it for yourself to your level and your edge. And so that's it. Yeah. Any questions about it?
Can you give an example? And maybe you just did. But
Yeah.
like when you're practicing for a gig, you have a solo. What
Yeah.
might be some parameters
Yeah.
you might give yourself?
Give me a tune that you want me to use as an example.
Autumn leaves.
Autumn Leaves. Okay. So the first chorus, I'm going to play short phrases. And now the next 4 bars, I'm going to play consistent eighth notes. 2, 3, 4. And then the next one, I'm going to do double stops. And then the next one, I'm going to do question and answer. Right? I'm always thinking about the structure. Not always, but like I've always practiced that way.
Right.
So I'd be like, practice, 7 courses of Autumn Leaves where you're just thinking about phrase length, or where you're thinking about where you start the phrase. So this time I'll play Autumn Leaves, but I'll always start the phrase maybe on a different place than I did before. A 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4, 1. A 3, 4. A 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So So every one of my phrases started on a different place in the bar. And I might just practice that. Now, I might need to slow it way down, or you might have to practice that, but not over the entire changes of autumn leaves. Maybe you practice that over just a D7. Or maybe you practice that just playing out of the C minor pentatonic scale, right? Because it's a lot to put together. Like, I've studied the changes of autumn leaves, like ad nauseam, right? You know, because if you're like, wait, what's that chord? Then this isn't going to work. So there's a time when we're practicing learning, and there's a time when we're practicing creating. And the key difference is that if you're practicing creating, you have to be working with something that you've learned, or that you understand. That's why when we play a waltz with any note, it works, because you can play any note. If you can play a note with your bow on the cello, then you can do it. You know what I mean? And that's why if I go to a kid who's 3 and it's the first time they've seen a violin, and because this was a battle that I used to have to pick for a long time, you know, because I started this whole thing in like 1996, and all the symphony players were like, that's weird, you're doing jazz, and all the jazz players were like, get away from here with that violin. Like, you know, so it was like, you know, everybody thought it was, and then all the teachers, then I started trying to promote it to teachers, and they're like, that's stupid. We don't teach jazz. That's weird. We do like serious music, right? All this kind of stuff, right? Like I'm talking 1996 is when I started in this. And there's people before me. John Blake was one of the first people that I met that was like a mentor of mine in 1996 who took my phone call, and like people before that, you know. But John was one of the cats back then that was really doing it. And but the teachers would always say, well, but you need to learn technique first. You can't teach improv, you can't teach jazz, you can't teach these other things until kids learn technique first. And I totally disagree with this. And so I say that to set this up, which is like, okay, 3-year-old, they pick up a violin for the first time, they've never seen it before. So I could say, okay, you see that there's 4 strings, right? I want you to take your thumb, and I want you to pick one of them and just pull it once. And then they're gonna look, and they're gonna be like, and that's improvisation right there. It's also structured, and it's also structured at their level. I didn't ask them to play a major scale. This is one of the problems with jazz education in general, okay? Which I consider myself a jazz educator, but usually in most of my classes, I'm not teaching jazz education, except for like very advanced classes, or for people who have expressed like a very explicit, like I want to learn how to swing. Then I'll teach jazz education. The problem with jazz education is they come in a typical clinic, it's like, let me tell you about swing. It's like this. Let me tell you about the blues. It's like this. Let me tell you about 2-5-1s. It's like this. Now, swing and improvise and just play whatever you want on the blues scale. Number one problem is you just taught them the blues scale like a minute ago and they don't know it. You just taught them swing a minute ago and they don't understand it. You know, you're talking about 2-5-1s. Nobody knows what you're talking about, right? And now you're asking them to improvise and they don't know enough to improvise. On top of that, you're still not giving them enough structure. Like if you're like, hey, just here's the blues scale, now play whatever you want. Not enough structure. In my class, I'm like, I want you to pick a note from the blues scale and I want you to play it now. That's specificity. That is like, what do you call it? Scaffold. You need that specificity. I want you to play it now. I want it to be this long. I want you to play 3 notes and it's in this tempo, right? You have to give kids, and anybody, adults too, they need that level of scaffolding. And they need to have more knowledge. That's why everybody gives up on jazz. And it's also why people persist for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years without ever feeling more comfort. So in my classes, that's why I'm hardcore this direction, which is like, let's play like a free waltz, but let's play music. You know, like be Victor Wooten about it, like play within your level and listen harder. And then on the other hand, I'm like, okay, let's learn the 3rds and 7ths, write it down and practice it 1,000 times. It's these extremes. And there was a book called Fast Thinking, Slow Thinking by Daniel Kahneman, where this was like 10 years ago in the airport. And he was like, look, we have 2 types of thinking, fast thinking and slow thinking. So fast thinking, if you ever want to learn the difference, just try to pick up your instrument in the other hand. You can't do it, right? So fast thinking is something that we have expertise in, and we've learned that expertise. It's like you want to, you know, if you want to see 5 moves ahead in chess, you have to play 1,000 games of chess. It's the same thing with autumn leaves. You don't get to just be to know autumn leaves, right? So fast thinking, the only other kind of fast thinking there is instinctive. And it's like if there's a predator, if there's a car that's about to like mow down like a baby, like you will like act like a superhuman, and like, because that's our instinct, right? So there's instinct and there's expertise, and that's fast thinking. But we have to develop that expertise. We should not kind of condescend. We should not condescend to think like it's easy to play jazz, or it's easy to play musical forms, or that's easy, or whatever. It's hard. Like jazz is just as hard as classical music. It's not harder. You know, it's not harder, especially if you come up for decades playing classical music, and then on top of that, you know, you've got all this like psychological drama going on. So slow thinking is we're learning something. We're learning something. It's memorizing. It's very slow. It's like learning a language. It's like learning math, and you have to repeat it over and over again. And I think that a lot of us, on top of not having this process together, which is what I'm trying to give you, is the process. It's like spend time where you're creating in structures that are comfortable for you. Don't condescend to them, take them seriously, record yourself and notice things. And then on the other hand, spend time learning stuff. That's the process side. But there's the psychological side. The psychological side is our inner resistance. That's like procrastination. It's like the same thing that makes us procrastinate. It's the thing that makes us beat ourselves up and have these like, well, I just can't do it, or like these, you know, kind of toggling between like delusions of grandeur and deep feelings of despair. Like, so we have to solve for the psychological, and we also have to solve for the process. Other questions?
That was a good question.
I have one more.
Yeah, please.
So I'm thinking all of this makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate your thorough breakdown because it's all like it's resonating deeply with me. I'm trying to think about, you know, a beginner violin student in 3rd grade, right, who is mastering or starting to learn the basic techniques,
Yeah.
and wanting to give them an opportunity to be creative,
Yes.
in a performance space.
Perfect.
Right? And we have these folk songs, but some of these folk songs have multiple changes in them, and
Yeah.
thinking about giving the student the recipe to be successful. But I feel like, so like what I've done, let's say I teach students a 12-bar blues, is I will write out the arpeggiated chords for them, and they, you know, giving them choices and what the changes are. But I'm wondering, maybe there's even a simpler, like,
Yes.
just giving them a pentatonic scale to start with and saying just like pick a note and play it. Is that, would you say that might be a better entry point for a younger musician?
It would be, if it's a blues, what I would say is you can use the pentatonic scale, but you want to limit the range, and you want to give it to them in a visual form, so it's like they're only playing on 2 strings, and you want to put just the notes of the pentatonic that fit the 2 strings. But then you need to add another level of scaffolding. You don't just say, okay, here's notes, just play something.
Right.
So you want to practice, like what I do is I practice them, like, I give people melodic rhythms, or I say limit your phrase length, or like play something fast, or play something slow. I go through all these different structures, and I make people practice in those structures. So it's like, okay, you're gonna play one note phrases, you know? You can put it wherever you want. Or you're gonna play 2 note phrases, but it's gonna sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ba-da. And then we have a pause, and we do it again. Ba-da. But with different notes this time. So, be-da. And then next time I'm like, okay, so it's something different. Bodhi. And then the next one they're gonna be like, they have time to think. Buddha. Right? I'm singing from the C minor pentatonic scale. Buddha. Your kid, and have them all do it at the same time. Your kids will succeed if you do that. If you give them that level of structure, you got to be teaching to their level, and you need to make it very specific. And you give them everything they can win with. I wouldn't necessarily fill the chord stacks on the blues with kids that age. So we can go through that more in depth, and I can coach you on all that. And in fact, I'm launching my method for teachers like starting next month, so we can talk about that. I want to get you in there.
Yeah.
And it's pay what you can, it's pay what you can afford, and so I want you in there.
I definitely.
Because it's so that I can walk with you through these specific things.
Yeah.
Now, when you talk about folk songs, at first I thought you were talking about maybe like a country song or a bluegrass song or something like that. And I think it's a very common mistake. I think it's common that we condescend to how hard that is to do.
That's what it's harder than it looks, and
Yes.
sometimes it's harder for me.
Yes.
And I feel like I don't want to overwhelm them. And
Yeah, exactly.
That whole thing that you said about musicians being so hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
Like I make one mistake and I just shut down. my kids all are that
Yes.
one times 37.
Absolutely.
So I want to use this as a way to boost confidence
Yes.
amongst the class.
Yes, we want to give people situations that they can succeed in. And success, it needs to be defined as participation is success, first of all, just doing it is success. But also, we need to give parameters that people can succeed in. So it's like, if I go to Miriam, I'm like, okay, play an F sharp melodic minor in 7th position. That's not fair to Miriam, assuming that she doesn't, may or not know 8th position, or may not know F sharp melodic minor. And it's also a mistake for me as a teacher to be like, well, here you go, here's, let me teach you a little bit about F sharp melodic minor, now do it. It's like, no, wait, it deserves a little more respect. So it's all about scaffolding, and it's all about dialing in these structures a little more. But I'd love to work with you on
Yeah, we'll chat more. Thank you.
that. Yeah. Other questions? I'm curious for people maybe that are more advanced in the room, like how this resonates with you. Like, let's say like Maya, and I don't even know that much about your level, but is there something about that, because I just met you, I know
Yeah.
most of the people here a little bit better than I know you, so what's coming up for you? Like, permission to be honest and give feedback, like, is there something?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think it's good, it's interesting to hear about these ways that we can, it's not limitations, but it's more progressions to go, because I feel like if it's, my turn to solo or something, most of the time I'm like, all right, what the heck am I gonna do here? There's infinite options.
Right.
So it can be, I feel a little frequently kind of overwhelmed. Like,
Right.
what am I gonna do here to not sound stupid? Or like I have I kind of have more of a fear-based, like, how do I not look bad, instead of what can I do to sound good, or what can I do that will be within my reach, and so I appreciate learning or thinking more about the structural standpoint of, how you can narrow your focus on things and be successful in that, instead of taking the world on of like just so generic and so endless, I guess, of like too many choices. That you've got rhythm, notes, chromaticis, so you've got so many options, and it's scary to have all of those choices. So it's comforting to parse it down, I guess.
Cool.
To consider that.
Well, there's one thing that comes up for me about that too, which is that I think a lot of times when we go into a solo, it's like, okay, I've got to take a solo. Well, we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves. That's like, I need to be brilliant.
Yeah.
I need to like change the world right now. I need to do something that nobody else has ever done. I need to be like so uniquely myself and soulful and inspire people. Like, it's a ton of pressure that we put ourselves, right? But if in the practice room, you lower the bar and you think, I just need to play in time, and I'm going to play 5-note phrases, for 7 courses on leaves, and my only goal is to play in time. It becomes a lot easier, because again, it's like just walking in life with a value. Like for me, like I've had issues with like being abrasive, coming across as abrasive, because I'm defensive, because I'm insecure. Right? Like, because I'm insecure, then my teaching can come across as abrasive sometimes. Because, and it's, where does it come from? It's like hurt people, right? This kind of thing. And so for me, if I start the day and I say, I just don't want to be abrasive, then it's like, if that's the bar I set for myself, and if I literally practice, just like, I'm not going to cuss during my class. It's like, I'm like, and then I'm like, good job, that's success. You know what I mean? Or it's like, I'm going to start every class with like, I'm so happy you're here. It's like little things can make such a big difference for me in my personal journey. Like that's like, I'm in the same journey. Like we're all in the same place. So for you with Autumn Leaves, it's like, well, find a tempo you're comfortable with, set structures that work for you, and then practice in the practice room. Like 5 courses like this, 5 courses like this, 5 courses like that. So you're also not serving yourself if you're just like, okay, I'm just going to have to go out on stage and do this thing.
Yeah.
Like practice 500 courses. That's what comes up for me.
Also just like feel like I totally panic when we're going around in these classes, and like like, who wants to play a solo, and then, or like
Absolutely.
Jason's like, okay, we're gonna go around and trade fours in the blues, and I'm like, ah, shit, like, because
That's human, and
It's
that's,
like
that's to be
comparing myself
expected. I would
to
feel the
others,
same
and,
way.
like, everyone's, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're so, like, there are some fantastic players, and I love that because I can learn so much from them. But I also sit there thinking negatively about myself, like,
Yeah.
oh, I can't compare, I'm not good like
Right.
he is.
Right.
Like, and then it's like my turn to play, and of course, that's what comes out when you're playing, is like this nervousness. I feel like I play something quickly and like cower,
Right.
and I feel meek and like
Yeah.
unhappy with myself.
And that's how I feel, and that's how I feel when I'm in a room with people who are teachers, who teach in classrooms, and they teach with like, you know, kindergartners and like, you know, the hardest neighborhoods in the world. And I'm like, I'm not worthy of being in the same room with this
Well,
person. They're gonna see through all my imperfections as
this
a
is
teacher,
like
you know what I mean?
A slightly
So-
different topic, I guess, but like, I wanna be better at being okay with where I'm at, and being able to like, yeah, if I tell myself, okay, the next time, you know, we're going around in solos, I'm just gonna play these 4 notes because I know I can play these 4 notes well in this certain rhythm. Even if the guy next to me is doing some crazy chromatic lick, like, how do I don't know, this is more psychological, like.
It
how
is,
do I
but that's
be
a really
okay with
important
where
part of
I'm
it.
at and not feel so judged of
It's-
myself of like, oh, I'm crappy and I
And it's
can't do
important
it.
for other people in the room to hear a person who is advanced to share that, you know, and it's like, that's why I want you to hear me say that too, because like there's always a better to get to. Like no matter, like Alan Holdsworth is one of my like hero like musician, he's a guitar player, he passed away a few years ago. But he's the most virtuosic cat you could ever know, right? Like just like mind-blowing stuff. And he was always like my bar. And then I remember Rick Farabracci played bass with him, and he told me, he was like, oh yeah, didn't you know, like I played all these gigs with Alan, after the gig I would go back and I'd be like, Alan, like I don't even know what to say. And Alan would just be drinking himself into a stupor and just saying like every note I played was shit. So,
Yeah,
so like
yeah.
your feelings of self-worth and your feelings, they really have no bearing on how good you are, and there's no level that you're ever gonna get that all of a sudden it's gonna solve,
Yeah.
if that's what you're relying on.
Yeah.
And sometimes novices have an advantage in this. Like for me, when I go to yoga class, I feel less pressure. Like, and I'm just like, I can't do it, but I'm fine with it. You know, so if we could all hack that for ourselves as musicians, you know, then we'd probably.
Like I just want to be more okay with where I'm at, because I
Yeah.
feel like if you're showing up to your solo thinking like, here goes nothing, it's gonna suck. It's like, yeah, here goes nothing and it is gonna suck. Because your mindset totally, at least
Right.
for me,
Yeah.
my mindset totally determines how I play. And if
Yeah.
I just can take a deep breath and say, okay, I'm not as good as that guy, but I'm gonna be okay. Like I need
Yeah.
I don't know.
But this also pertains to this class, because you also have the option to say no thanks. And I think that a lot of times we'll try to be creative over structures that we're not ready for yet.
Yeah.
And it's safer and, you know, less triggering, and you create less trauma if you're like, I'm not gonna play on that tune. Or maybe it's a tune you know, but they're playing it at a tempo that's too fast. And so I would actually say, no, don't play on the tune, especially if it's gonna feel triggering to you
Yeah.
and traumatizing to you.
Well, you know, one of the things you used to say, we said this a long time ago, when you go in the practice room, your mission is to be your own best friend. And your job is to kind of look at yourself and say, how can I support you? How can I support myself today? And if you are saying things that are, you know, not helpful, it's gonna just bring.
Yeah.
You're not gonna want to go in practice room. You're not gonna want to go and take out that piece again. You're not gonna. So you have to always like. You know, one of the things I had very, as a classical musician, I had very rough teachers. They were very rough with me. And like I started out as a pianist, and so as a piano player, intonation was
Getting out of control, right?
right. Not usual. So when someone says, you know, when I try to trace viola, someone says, you know, this is not tune, you have to listen to. So what the hell does that mean? You know, so that's like a whole thing to come to, right? So these are just things that you have to say. I'm gonna help you with this. I'm like, what would you say to a kid? I mean, what would you say to a child?
Exactly.
You don't say the kinds of things to a child that you say to yourself. you know, when you're in your practice room, you kind of think of that, kind of see yourself as like a little kid with that instrument, you know? And like, I mean, I've been studying with Chris a long time, and I guess like for the first years, for the first 4 years, I didn't know what the hell going on. It was just still very, I was still like trapped in that kind of, you know, you should do this, you gotta do this right, you should work like this. And so, you know, sometimes we have to undress and redress. And, you know, every time if you are not feeling confident, calm, and, you know, creative, when you're in your practice room, there is something wrong. There's something wrong with what you're doing. And I think that should also happen on the stage. If you're not feeling comfortable, creative, calm, curious, something's wrong.
But sometimes you're in the practice room and you have a certain amount of time to get things done. And you're just not in the headspace or the mood for it, but you have to be because you have to get it done. And sometimes one of the things that when we were doing film music and we only had X amount of time to get it done, Hans Zimmer would say, just back up, he would say, how can we make this better?
How can we make this better?
Yeah, how can we make this better? And how can we give you more space? And how can we give you that freedom, but also the wise restraints to make you free? That was helpful.
I agree that psychology is really important. And you know, my invitation to you would be, you know, think about these, what I call elemental forms or elemental structures. You know, if you're trying to play over a song with changes or a tempo that's too hard, think about how could I create a form for myself to be creative within, and then put in the reps, you know, with another person, duo or by yourself, you know, and because that used to happen to me a lot too, is that I would go and I'd play a lot of gigs, but I wouldn't actually practice. I wouldn't shed like 50 courses, like shed 50 courses of the song. And if you're not ready for the song, then just shed one bar, but shed it like 50 times. If you're making variations on fiddle tunes, if I talk about micro improvisation later with, you know, with fiddle tunes, it's like if you're playing Whiskey for Breakfast, you take that phrase and you just improvise that phrase like 30 times. And that's what I did when I was like trying to learn how to be like play fiddle music, because I thought it was a lot harder for me than jazz actually. So it was unfamiliar, you know. And I would be like, well, I'm going to work on this one phrase and I'm going to make micro improvisations on this phrase 30 times. You could also do parameters in fiddle tunes for sure. Yeah, I mean you could be playing D Mixolydian, you know. That for, you know, but do it for 50 courses. They put in the time. So that, yeah, like I said, that's the invitation. Like, if you can try to work on this idea, if you think you understand it, or if you grabbed any of those forms that I gave you, like try to pull somebody aside and do it, or do it by yourself. You know, to grab a moment here and there and do it. Any other questions?
I'm gonna add something to what Maya was saying.
Please.
Like,
Or comments, yes.
in all my years of therapy, it's a very basic thing that they tell you about judgment, that they discover that usually if you're judging yourself, we're judging other people. And vice versa, usually if you're judging other people, you're really judging yourself really hard. This is something I've had to work on a lot. And so I came into this group with zero classical training. I can't read. I was terrified. Mostly terrified about throwing everybody else under the bus. Like, oh my God, I'm going to throw everybody under the bus. Get out of here. So, but the way I deal with it is, I work first, instead of looking at myself, I look at everybody else and I'm like, okay, I'm just not going to judge anybody else. And I'm like, oh, look how nice they all are. Everybody's kind of eclectic and out there, and that's really great. Look, these people are so nice and cool, and everybody's coming from different parts of the country with different ideas and different backgrounds and different styles and different levels, and everybody's so cool. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, they're going to be okay with me then. And it's going to freeze me up, like, okay, I'm just going to take the thing solo. Yay!
And you gotta start where you are, right?
Yeah.
And just, because you only get better by doing, right?
Yeah, that's like I I don't wanna say no, because I think I'm okay, I wanna take the opportunities I can get, and I'd rather play something simple and right and give it a try. I'd rather try and fail than not try at all, because I'd rather try and fail and have still the opportunity of knowing that I've tried and that knowing what I can do better than just like saying no. So I just have to find a acceptance of myself of like where I'm at, and maybe not like I do judge people, but usually it's in a positive way. I'm like, oh, they're so much better than me, and it's like it's. I guess I compare myself to them.
you.
Well, I guess we all
You
compare
sound so
ourselves.
good, and I was like, oh, she's a good girl. So I'm almost surprised to hear you saying that, although a little relieved.
Imposter syndrome is everywhere. There's a girl I know who goes to Juilliard as a violinist, and she's like, I'm so bad. I'm like, shut up, you go to Juilliard. But that was kind of like when she said that to me, like she thinks she's bad. I'm like, how can you think that? Like, because everybody can. You can be the best violinist in the world.
And it also depends on your training too, because if you come up in a rough school like Al was talking about, which I certainly did,
Yeah.
where you're
Or
beat
like
up a lot.
perfection is like
You're beat up all the time,
Yeah.
and you're always taught it's not good enough, you're
Yeah.
not good enough.
So I'm trying to be okay with not
Dance is
being good.
brutal, so.
That's interesting, because in college, we had an orchestra, and we were good at doing Mozart. We had this very uptight conductor, and he was so uptight that he had a heart attack.
Oh my God.
He didn't die, but we got the bassist, who's the jazz dude. He came up, and he's got perfect pitch. He's amazing. So he goes up there, and he's throws down the bass line. We hear the downbeat. We hear it, and he goes, "Okay, basses. Okay, I'm gonna tell you this because I love you, and I know each and every one of you all are great. You aren't playing to your potential. I don't know why, but we're gonna fix that right now." So he said, "Basses, you're quarter tone flat. Oboe, you're 3 measures ahead of everybody. Flute, where were you in bar 2? And violins, hello, here's the downbeat. You guys know how to do this. Now come on, you guys have this." And he's like, "Give me your best." And he puts the downbeat down in a line like a planet. Because we've been browbeaten for so long and didn't like the guy before, that when we got somebody who gave us some love, we gave it right back. And we got him for the rest of the year, and had our concert. It was awesome.
Oh, great.
I think there's also like the useful part of of that, like, I'm not good enough, is that it inspires us to
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah.
And so thanking that part of ourselves that
Yeah.
cares, that knowing like, okay, this is because we care,
Yeah.
like.
And I try to like pick a partner when we've done like the little breakouts. I'm always like, okay, well, I'm gonna pick her because she sounds so dang good, and I'm inspired by her. And like, when I play with her as my partner, like I learn something from her, So it's inspiring today, not just.
That happened to me this morning. The Asian guy who's like really good at jazz. I was struggling with trying to do the thirds and sevenths, and he says it's this, 1-4-3 shape or 1-4-2 shape. And Adam was working up with me that last year as well, but like we took those 4 chords from this morning, and he was like patient with me until I wrote it all out so I could see how the shape shifted, and he wouldn't leave until I had it, which I thought was just like the most generous and kind thing, because it's like ephemeral. It like once it's gone, it's gone. Like you said, write it down. It's gonna be. But I did, and I feel like I'm gonna go back and practice that. But like he was so kind to make sure that I had that. That was so sweet. It was just excellent, beautiful people.
So I invite you, with the remaining time that we have, to break out into some free, structured free jams if you like. I'm also happy to sit here and do it with some people if you'd rather do that. If anybody wants to try some different examples with me, I can do that.
Could we try like to jam on a tune or something, or just something easy? Like we don't even need a chart, but so with some kind of structure like a
Like
tune?
like we did before. Someone else can
You
maybe
can do what we
sonatas.
did, like this morning or something.
Continue what we were doing with you.
Okay, all right, yes. So this is called Little Sunflower. bass line, and then we'll have kind of as the structure any notes from C major, but it's really D Dorian, right? But all you need to know is A, B, C, D, E, F, G when everything is natural. And we can have like something like this. Yeah, good. So how about we have bass line here, have a chop here, and we have the chugga chuggas over here. Can we do that? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Just here, Spine. I think so. Yeah. Now let's switch it. So now we'll have a bass line, chugga chuggas, chop. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Any notes in C major. Cool. Yeah, that's it. So now let's have bass line, chugga chugga, solo. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Beautiful. And then what they could do is they could switch it up, right? They could say, okay, now you take the bass line. It's always gonna be tricky when the high voice plays the bass line, but you can still make it work. So it's the same thing here. So bass line, chugga chugga, solo. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Oh, that's right. Dum, dum, dum. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and.